topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert Show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from experts on such topics as legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to our experts in community association law, estate planning law, tax relief, Medicare, public insurance adjusters, neuropathy treatment, business brokers, and personal injury law, along with many other topics. Now here's your host for the last 17 years, Steve O.
Morning, Ohio, Michigan. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where, like the man said, for the last 17 years, we have brought you the top experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. I got to tell you, I have been shocked by the letters that we're getting for this show. We're talking about selling a business, and I don't know if it's the economy. We're going to find out. We have the greatest expert, the business broker with Great Lakes Business Advisors, with Brad Ruth. I got to tell you, good morning, Brad. I am shocked by the people who are looking to possibly sell their business. Have you noticed an upswing in that?
Good morning, Steve. It's I don't know if it's any more than normal. I mean, our business has never really been affected by economy, except for before I was in the business, which was 08, 09, was probably the one point. I've talked to guys that have been around that long, said that was the only time we saw a dip in transactions. Otherwise, even COVID, I did 8 or 9 deals in COVID year, and I thought you wouldn't think anything would get done during COVID. And, people are still buying and selling. So it's just I think we're in a tough financial time. And the problem is business owners will say, hey, I want to sell now. Well, my sales are trailing off and my profits are down, and now I want to sell. Well, that's not the time to sell. That's the time we got to fix it and we got to turn it around, and then we can sell it. But we can't. Just because you're down now doesn't mean you can't come back, but it's also a terrible time to sell.
Well, I'm going to just share this with our audience. And hey, welcome to our large TikTok audience. I'm looking at it. Over 5,000 people are watching right now just on TikTok. But Brad, I got to tell you that I think I wrote you about a month ago. I just found out that a friend of mine is selling her restaurant. And the first thing I thought about is, I got to get her together with Brad, because you have so much experience in the restaurant business. And I really trust you. The only problem is, by the time I called her, found out that she'd already hired a local business broker. But I just have so much confidence in the way you handle your clients that I wanted to turn one of my good friends on to you. Tell people about Great Lakes Business Advisors.
Yeah, so we're a mergers and acquisition firm. We help business owners with the sale of their business, and help them prepare the business for sale. Also, I'm going down to speak at a plumbing and HVAC association meeting down in Dayton today. And they invited me in because a lot of business owners had a plan. They started a business, and then you should always have a plan to open and a plan to exit. And most business owners just have a plan to open, but not a plan to exit. So what I try to do is educate business owners about value acceleration, not necessarily exit planning, but you can't exit plan if you're not doing a value acceleration and you're helping your business grow and doing the things that you need to do, which is, taking an owner and make sure they're not the bottleneck. You want to decentralize the owner, and you want to have systems in place. You want to have people in place, and you want it to be, a well-run operation with, standard operating procedures and and a sales team and how you handling leads, how you doing various parts of the business. And I think that is, people just think you open up and you do it, where you've got to systemize what you're doing. That's what makes a business sellable, is cash flow and recurring revenue and systems and people.
Brad, I got to tell you, everybody's heard the expression skin in the game. Well, you really do have skin in the game, because you do so much work before you realize your first dime.
Yeah. There's a lot of upfront stuff that's going on that we work through. I mean, we charge for business valuation, but if you end up listing with us, I waive that. But I also spend a lot of time even before we get to that, just kind of looking at the business. And a lot of times I'll look at it and go, hey, let's not even spend the time and money on a business valuation right now. We've got to fix this, this, and this. And once we do some of these things, then let's look at it and see what the value is, because businesses, for most business owners, are 80% of their retirement, what they think their retirement's going to be. And if you don't know what your business value is, how do you know what your retirement's going to look like? What do you have in your retirement accounts now? Do you own real estate? Do you own stocks? Are you doing a 401k? But you need to put a value on your business now and determine, okay, this is where this is where it's at today, and where do I need it to be if I want to exit? And I think you got to have a plan. There's no question. You got to have a plan for exit.
Speaking about business evaluation, Brad, I think one of the hardest things that you have to tell your client is, when you've developed and you've started a business, it's like your baby. And when it's time to sell, you think your business is worth a lot more, because there's a lot of feelings that go into that.
Yes.
And you have to kind of sometimes break the news to them and give them reality.
Yeah, I have to tell them their baby's ugly.
Yes.
More times than I would like. But it's the reality of the world we're in. Do I want to sugarcoat it and tell you it's something that it's not? I don't think I'm doing you any service. And there's some advisors that will do that because they want to get a listing, but it's not sellable, or it's at a much lower price. And what I try to do is, like, I had a client right now, they had a nice business, probably doing 17 million in sales, and their EBITDA back in 24 was 400,000. Last year was 1.5 million. And they're like, I want to go to market. I said, well, their fiscal year, let's get to the end of this fiscal year, because you do a 3-year average on this thing, and they lost money in 22 because they're fixing all their problems. So we have to go back 3 years, and if those numbers aren't looking good, then we have to make the improvements. So as 23 was bad, 24 got better, and 25 was fantastic. I'm like, let's show we can back up 25 and 26. Now we can really say, hey, we fixed it. It's better. Now we've got more value, and now we can take it to market. And that's a difference between a business maybe being worth 1.5 million and maybe be worth $5 or $6 million. And that's just waiting, And I think the biggest thing we got to look at is patience. We can't be eager to go to market. We have to do what's best for our client. Say, hey, let's pump the brakes. Let's wait, another half a year. Let's see where you end up, and then let's do that.
We're getting a lot of questions on YouTube chat, people wanting to know, what areas do you specialize in? What types of businesses?
So there's my main specialty is HVAC and plumbing and electrical companies, so in the trades. So those are my main areas of specialization. I do manufacturing and I do restaurants, but I do a lot in the restaurants. I just don't. I'm really good at selling them, but they're very challenging businesses to sell. So and not that I can't sell them, but I try to. My focus has been the last 2 years on the HVAC, plumbing, electrical area, because that's where I want to spend my time, and that's where I'm speaking at, pretty much every week, around the Midwest.
Hey, Brad, I'm here in Southern Florida. There are so many restaurants who've been around for a long time going under, but there's there's also a lot of new restaurants opening up too. What is going on in Michigan and Ohio with restaurants?
I mean, you see a lot of them. There's been some iconic names that I've had a chance to look at, over the years, even in Cleveland. And I was like, oh, I was so, I'm excited. I've heard of this brand. It's really great. They've been around forever. And then I look at the books. I'm like, I get it. It's they're just not making money. They kind of ran their course, and restaurants run their course sometimes. And there's just, as much as you have loyalty for a while, your customers start to go away because they're passing away or they're moving away, and then you don't have that. It's recurring. And when I owned my restaurant, we had a lot of families in, and now I go in that restaurant even though I sold it, and I still see the kids of the families that were coming in there. That that's where they spent their time. So it's just, unfortunately, it just, sometimes a restaurant runs its course, and then we can't sell it because it's not making any money now. So they just have to end up closing it down. And I hate to see that, but on the other side of it, I can't sell it.
This is a great question that came in. When is the best time to sell your business?
As far as the time of year or the cycle of your business?
I think they're wanting to know mainly about, here's retirement. When do you think, they want to know when, if you're thinking about retiring, is a good time to get out?
I think that you've got to, as business owners, at some point you start running out of gas. And
yes.
If you're feeling like you're running out of gas, then I think you need to start talking about that. If you're thinking about selling, then you got to start thinking about, okay, I should talk to an advisor. I should look at the financials. Maybe I'm not ready to sell now. Let me see. Let me get an opinion of where I'm at today. And does it fill my value gap or my wealth gap? If I think it's worth 1.5 million, and then you have someone come in and do evaluations, it's worth $1 million. So you're not far away. So we need to fix some things. We need to do this, and this in order to fix it. So I think you need to start looking at it, in 2 or 3 years in advance if you want to plan an exit. Not that we can't sell. I've had business where I brought them in February, and we put them on the market in May, and they were running it the way they should have been ran. But that's rare. It's rare that a business is ready to sell when I look at it. It's usually we got to do some tweaking, and we got to say, let's make some changes to the business, the way you're reporting your taxes, the way you're trying to, you're trying to reduce your taxes for the tax man, but you're also killing the value because you're doing some things that we can't add back, which add backs are what we use to recast financial statements to maximize the value of what the owner is pulling out of the business. So, and we got to do things that are trackable. When you're doing trades, when you have people paying you cash, you're not depositing it, you're doing bartering. There's a lot of things you're doing that aren't trackable. If you got your kids on payroll, no problem. We can track that. We can add it back. If you're doing 401k, no problem. We can add that back. So we just got to see smart things if you're reducing, your tax burden.
Here's one. Do you find yourself being creative when it comes to financing the business?
There are many different ways to do it. Typically, we're going SBA financing, which is a 10% down payment typically. And the SBA will finance, the 90% of it. But there are many other creative ways, whether it's an earnout, whether there's seller financing, possibly. If there's real estate involved, maybe, they get SBA loan on the business, but then you seller finance the real estate because there's a little more security for the seller in that way. It really depends on what the seller situation is and then the cash that the buyer has, but there's so many different ways to finance a deal, and every deal is unique, and it just depends on the buyers and sellers involved and what has to be done and, how the numbers look.
Here's a question from Cleveland. They want great show. I want to know, do most businesses want the old owner to stay on for a while, and how long usually is that term?
The less involved the owner is, the less amount they're needed after the sale. Okay. But I've got a deal right now where the owner is heavily involved just because it's a technical business. So he may stick around for 6 months to a year, and he will get paid. But typically when we do a deal, the owner may stick around for 4 to 8 weeks, and they won't be paid anything. They're just going to be, that's kind of part of the sale. And then after that, there's a consulting agreement set up, or they can stick around and work in the business if they would like to, for a period of time. But that's, every deal is different. And that's what, the owner knows how much they're involved in, and how much information has to be passed off. And they've got SOPs in place, and they've got good people in place. They could, if they're good, they could be walking out in a week or two. Wow. Just depends.
Another great question is, great show. This is from Toledo. I found your show last month, really a good show. Can you tell us the downside of trying to sell your business yourself?
Well, there's a couple. I was just at a 4-day conference for the International Business Brokers Association, and it's the M&A source. And I talked to a lot of buyers and a lot of private equity buyers, and the value that we bring as an M&A advisor, a business broker, is we prepare the business to sell. We create a confidential marketing package, which is review, which is, we call a CBR, or you call it a SIM. So we do that. We prepare. We have all the due diligence items already teed up in a data room. We keep it confidential. And when an owner's trying to sell it, they're focused on trying to sell their business, and then they're trying to run their business, and they're losing focus on keeping their business like a well-oiled machine. And then they get distracted, and then the employees find out because they're getting phone calls in the office. And so when I take a business to market, the owner's only involved after I've screened the buyers. They've given us a personal financial statement. They've given proof of funds. I got a questionnaire that they fill out. We pre-qualify them. I do an interview with them for an hour or two to make sure they're a good fit for the business before I'll even introduce them to the owner. And then we'll do a Zoom call first, because I don't want to disrupt the business. Right. And then if that goes well, then we do an on-site visit. But it really comes down to, and I talked to several, bankers and private equity, like, when you guys are involved and you handle everything from A to Z, so the owner just has to do the interview, and they can move on and do their thing. Like, they're not involved. I'm handling all the behind the scenes thing. And the biggest thing we have is where deals fall apart is from letter of intent to closing, and trying to and keeping the deal together is really important. And that's why we do its pre-qualification with an SBA, so we know that it's an SBA qualified business. We have a buyer that's qualified. We just have to plug in the pieces, and we've got usually 2 or 3 options for finance that they can look at. So we do all the legwork. So it's a quick moving situation. The biggest killer of a deal is time. So we want to move through that process because someone could pass away. The buyers, someone in the family could pass away. That could change. Someone in the business could pass away. The owner could pass. All these things can happen in time. So the sooner we get from, hey, we're interested, hey, LOI, closing, the better.
Brad, what's the average? I know every deal is different. What's the average time it takes to sell a business?
Typically 6 to 9 months is typically. Usually there's the phase on the front end that's usually, a month or two of the prep work, the due diligence, the business valuation, interview with a seller, gathering all the information. I can do that in 2 or 3 weeks or a month, but it just, the reality of it is that, and typically if we have a quality business, it's 6 to 9 months. If it's a really good one, we could have it under an LOI in a month or two. I know that when I take it to market, we can have an LOI, and usually you're from an LOI to closing, letter of intent to closing, is usually somewhere between 45 and 75 days, I would say. If you have a good lender involved, we can get it done in 45 to 60 days.
So if you take on a business, you have a pretty good feel if you can sell this business or not, correct?
I won't take it if I don't think I can sell it. If I'm looking at it and I go, there's just no way. I just had a client I was working with for 2 years. He was trying to sell it on his own. And his numbers were fantastic when we first started talking. And since then, his EBITDA is literally 25% of what it was 2 years ago. And now he's like, I'm ready to sell. I'm like, well, the problem is now, because you're trying to sell it on your own and you're not focused on the business, had some health issues. Now the business is not sellable because we have profits are dropping off like a rock from the, over the last 2 years. Now we got to turn it around and fix it. And so if you're going to go, if you wait and then you're not paying attention and you're trying to do it on your own, it starts to trail. It could start to trail off if you're not running properly.
Brad, what are your feelings on franchises?
I think franchises are good. I don't hate them. I think the challenge you have is, I've been in franchises, and the number one challenge is a business owner. They're going to set you up and they're going to show you how to do everything. That's great. And then for the rest of your franchise life, you're paying them 5% of profit. It's 5% of sales or whatever the number is. Well, you say, well, it's only 5% of sales. Well, in the restaurant industry, if our margins are somewhere between 10 and 20, and you're giving them 5%,
right,
that's 25% of profit for the life of your business. And so is it bringing enough value to you in order to do that? So sometimes you're better off buying an existing business with people and customers in place without a royalty that you can come in and just own the business, learn the business, owner teaches the business, and you move on. And franchise are good for it's for some people. Other people, it depends on how much value that franchise brings and how many customers they bring in. If there's systems in place that make it attractive, then there's value in
it. With talking about franchises, I love the fact that they can keep you from making certain mistakes. Is there a better? I know restaurants do franchising. I know a lot of the home improvement areas, plumbing, there's franchises, roof. What is the best area? We have someone who looks like they're looking for a business.
It depends on what you like to do. Restaurants bring value. There's a lot of upfront cost in restaurant. Build out of a restaurant, first time it was a couple $100,000. Second time it was $500,000 on a build out.
Wow.
So there's a lot of expense on a restaurant build out. So they're a high risk, not a great reward when you're talking 15, I'd say 10 to 15% bottom line profit. I think those are tough. I think there's some less expensive, like I was with ServiceMaster for a long time, and there's ServPro and some of those that are really good. They bring a lot of value, and they have a network that you get business because you're ServiceMaster. You get business because you're ServPro. And your startup costs aren't that high because you're just buying, you're buying chemicals for inventory. You're buying a van and an extractor or whatever it may be, or you're doing janitorial. There's a big network in disaster restoration that I think it's important to have a name like ServPro or ServiceMaster when people know the name, and insurance adjusters go, hey, just call ServiceMaster or call ServPro or whatever. And that the margins are really good. Yeah, you may give up 5 to 10% in profit, or in royalties, but the amount of money you're gaining because of the name and the value that comes with it. And the margins are pretty good. I mean, your cost for chemicals on a job may be 5%, and then the rest is labor. I mean, you could be, your costs are lower because your overhead. You can just get a building and rent it, 1,000 square foot for $1,000 or $2,000 a month. In restaurant, you're buying a location that's prime, or you're renting you could be, 5 to 10 to 15,000 a month, plus a build out that will cost you, 250 to 500,000. Those things really add up. And so there's a little bit more budget friendly and really businesses that can grow.
Brad, I got to tell you, you are so knowledgeable. And one of the things we're hoping is that we can let educate you, not to try to do this yourself, to hire a business broker like Brad. Brad, how do people reach you?
They can reach me on LinkedIn. You can find me there. You can find me at my website, which is at the bottom here. or you can call me. You can call me on my cell phone. It's 330-524-8205. Shoot me a text if you want to jump on a call. I can just answer questions. It doesn't cost you anything to give me a call, and I can answer questions, walk you through, a few things. I can tell you in a phone call whether I can help you or not in probably 20 minutes.
And we have so many people who are listening now on TikTok and iHeartRadio. For those people who can't see your phone number, what is it again?
It's 330-524 is the 8205, or my website, glbainc.com.
And Brad's with us every month. Brad, thank you so much. This is such an important area, and to have someone like yourself who's so knowledgeable about this. Thanks so much. We'll see you next month.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brad. That's Brad Ruth. Folks, I'm telling you, if you're thinking about selling your business, it's worth the amount of money to hire a business broker. I did that. It was so well worth it. That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back in with you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.